from Abuja.
Hello, thank you for being a part of our show. We appreciate you. I'm Magnus Kpakol, and this is Magnus Kpakol GVA, Global Views Africa. As you know, it's all about how we can raise the level of living. That's what it's all about. In view today, a continuation of our discussion on Nigeria's stated readiness to fight and defeat poverty. As we all know, President Muhammadu Buhari has declared that Nigeria can lift 100 million people out of poverty in 10 years. So as we said last time, like Pharaoh or the king of Egypt, the president has had his dream or vision. Today we continue our attempt to interpret it and include the nature of the big fight against poverty in Nigeria. And so we continue with Dr. Otive Ibuzo to shed his light on the matter. Dr. Ibuzo is the Executive Director of the African Center for Leadership, Strategy and Development. He was previously head of Action Aid Nigeria, and so is well qualified to see how a country can end poverty. But before this, in our hidden economics, we look at how it is important to show respect. Now, up next in our quick view, we evaluate Nigeria's debt service. That's coming right up. Across the globe, much emphasis has been placed on debt to GDP ratio, which literally means comparing what a country owes with what it produces. While it is quite useful to do that, it is really more instructive, especially for developing countries, to look at debt service payments as a ratio of government revenue or as a ratio of export revenue, since it is the revenue after debt service that will be used for development programs. In this connection, what is Nigeria's approximate debt service as a percent of revenue? 10%, 30%, 50%, or 70%. What is Nigeria's approximate debt service as a percent of export revenue? 10%, 20%, 30%, or 40%. Stay with us for our answers coming up shortly. Still in view, a continuation of Dr. Otive Ibuzo's discussion on how to lift Nigeria out of poverty. But up next in our hidden economics, be careful to show respect.
Mo lè torí ẹ̀wẹ̀ lóògùn o, mo tún lè torí ẹ̀wẹ̀ lọ́sà. Mo lè torí ẹ̀nà gògó náà, ọmọ aráyé kí mi ní wẹ̀dọ̀nsà. Ó yá pọ́n mi lé, bèbí pọ́n mi lé. Má lọ lọ́kọ méjì, lòrò pẹ́ tó sùn lé. Pọ́n mi lé, ó yá bèbí pọ́n mi lé. Má lọ lọ́kọ méjì, lòrò pẹ́ tó sùn lé. Má lọ bá wọn dá délé bọ̀ ẹ́. Wọ́n gba certification ni, wọ́n bẹ̀ lábúlé bẹ̀ ní Lagos.
Bomile by Remilekun Abdul Kadir Jafaru, known by his stage name Reminisce. Reminisce is a Nigerian singer, rapper, and songwriter. Okay, so in this song, he's having a fight with his wife. He's asking his wife to give him respect. Indeed, actually threatening to divorce his wife and send her home to her parents as a way of devaluing her. I hope it doesn't always come to such undesirable language or situation. Now then, the point is this: everybody wants to be respected. And ladies, guys want this probably more than anything you might imagine. But I want to discuss the economics of respect between politicians and the masses. Politicians must realize that the masses don't want to be poor and feel that a good part of their poverty is connected with the disrespect they get from their political leaders. When politicians come for marriage with the poor and the masses, they dance with them and show great respect. But after the marriage is consummated in political victory, the politician starts to show disrespect and never comes around any longer. The politician appears to forget that another round of elections might soon be around the corner. And the masses, those poor people, can send him or her back home to the village. So Mr. or Madam Politician, this sending home thing can be a way of devaluing you. Nobody wants devaluation, and I don't mean currency devaluation. Be sure to show respect, especially to voters, and avoid personal devaluation. Our hidden economics for you.
Baby, come here. Malo loko meji, dorogbe to sule. Come here. Oh yeah, baby, come here. Malo loko meji, dorogbe to sule. Malo ba won da dele bon e. Wọ́n gba certification e. Wọ́n bẹ lábúlé bẹ nílé kan sí. Malo ba won da dele bon e. Wọ́n gba certification e. Wọ́n bẹ lábúlé bẹ nílé kan sí. I love you no more, Kuma King Sheshe o. If you don't love me again, please let me know. Malo jẹ́ nǹkan ẹ̀mọ́kànnà pẹ̀lú.
Before we start our discussion, here are our quick view answers. Nigeria's debt service payments as a percent of revenue is around 50%. That means that in theory, Nigeria will have only 50% of its revenue left for its development programs. Nigeria's debt service payments as a percent of export revenue is about 10%. This is relatively good compared to many African countries. So, as we have stated, President Muhammadu Buhari has come out boldly to declare that Nigeria, Africa's largest nation in income and population, can lift about 100 million people out of poverty in the next 10 years. So, how will Nigeria do it? To see how it can be done, we continue with Dr. Otive Ibuzo. Dr. Ibuzo is the Executive Director of the African Center for Leadership, Strategy and Development. He was the International Head of Campaigns of Action Aid International and Country Director of Action Aid Nigeria. Please join us in our continued discussion with Dr. Otive Ibuzo. I mean, we didn't do well during the 80s and 90s.
No, but even
if you look by looking at the GDP performance, GDP growth rate.
You know this argument about GDP.
We're looking at the numbers that are written.
Those numbers, we're talking about translating those numbers into effect.
Livelihood.
Because see the 2000s, we saw increase in GDP.
Yeah.
But in the 1980s, the level of poverty was 23%.
Yeah.
Yet, in the 2000s, the economic growth rate was 7%, 5 to 7%, yet poverty increased to as much as 70%.
So mostly we're looking at relative poverty, maybe.
Yeah, so no, I'm talking about absolute poverty. Yes.
Okay.
Well, as the economy was growing, poverty was growing. That's what we saw.
I'm not going to argue with you much because I think you're up to something. Yes.
No. So
you're the one on that side. So it's okay.
No, but that's the reality. The statistics. I'm not talking about any official statistics from Bureau of National Bureau of Statistics, NBS, shows that during those periods in the 2000s and 2010s early, where economy was growing, poverty was also increasing to up to 70% in 2010. That's the official number from the National Bureau of Statistics. And the reason is because they've not done what these countries have done. What did the countries do? First is that as there was a rising prosperity, it created a middle class, which were able to save. And that savings was invested in different initiatives.
So they had inclusive growth.
Absolutely.
So people participated.
Inclusive economic growth. And that's what everybody is talking about now. You know, they ensured that there was industrialization. They promoted innovation.
Absolutely.
So there were new products and services beyond what they would need in their country. So it led to export and earning of foreign exchange. You know, they promoted research and development.
You're right.
But beyond this, you know, any country, and if the federal government, you know, this initiative of lifting 100 million people out of poverty, there are certain policy shifts that are needed. First is that the government must put in place policies to address inequality and ensure inclusive economic growth.
Like what? What kinds of policies?
Policies I will call pro-poor policies.
Yeah,
I'm coming now. Pro-poor policies. Just generically. When we talk about pro-poor policy, we mean that, for instance, housing policy that is public-private partnership, like the one we practice in many parts of the country, where what it means is that government will give you a plot of land, and then you go there and demarcate it and sell one plot for 10 million. That can never favor the poor. There is what we call social housing, where governments, you know, build houses and through some mechanisms ensure that the poor.
Where do they have the money to do
access. The government.
They say they don't have money.
No,
the budget is only about 20-something billion dollars. Federal government budget.
I know. But there is, in this administration, there is 100 billion naira budgeted for social housing. You know, so that is a beginning point. You know, so even if we say that government does not have money, what we've seen in reality in this country is that government has the greatest amount of money compared to the briefly carrying capitalists that we have. You know, whose only work is really as contractors to government. So government must have those kind of policies. And one other policy which is crucial to lifting 100 million people out of poverty is social protection. If you look at these countries, whether it's Brazil, you know, Brazil was almost, I think, the second most unequal country in the world. But when they started social protection within a period of few years, their position changed. So countries like Argentina, countries like Brazil, countries like Mongolia, you know, several, Rwanda, South Africa, Malawi, several countries of the world that are implementing social protection policies have been able to lift people out of poverty. At the risk of being immodest, in this country, we've seen that people are ignorant about what social protection is. And they will tell you, you know, how do you waste money just giving 5,000 naira to people? What will that do? That is elitist conception, middle class mentality. Because we know from studies, from practice, in fact, our center been involved in social protection work with including conditional cash transfer in a project, you know, in Kebbi State, where we lifted over 12,000 people out of poverty by giving.
You put your own money in it?
It's donor money from USAID.
Okay. Yeah.
You know, every month we give 5,000 naira, and then we put a mechanism in place for agriculture training and giving them access to seeds and access to agric input.
No, but we are doing it now, though. We have a conditional cash flow, which I don't know whether people know. I started when I was in government. The conditional cash transfer program. Yeah, but the thing is, we're doing it, but it's not good enough.
No, the point is not sufficient.
It's not sufficient.
It's not sufficient.
That's the point. Yes.
But that's not the point. Is that there are many politicians, there are many self-styled social commentators that are saying it's a useless program. You don't have to give money to people. That's the point I'm making.
Yes.
That if we really want to lift these 100 million people out of poverty, we need to expand.
You're right. Yeah.
The social protection program.
Yeah.
Because in countries like Brazil, you know what they did, sir? They went as far as having soup kitchen, you know, where they cook raw food banks, you know, school meals, and people come and line up and eat free.
We're doing it here too now with the home
grown school feeding program. No, but in Brazil, beyond school children, they have food bank where adults line up. Because if you want to lift people out of poverty, what do you focus on? Food, health, agriculture, and infrastructure.
Yeah. So what is the word, as an expert, to Nigeria and to Africans? This is the thing that you must do if you are to succeed within the next, say, 20 years.
I would say
in the fight against poverty.
Three things. One is that they should have a national development plan that prioritizes the key sectors that affect the life of people. That is agriculture, health, education, and infrastructure. Number one thing.
Is that what China did?
Yes.
Is that what India did?
Yes. China had a 10-year development plan.
Okay.
India had a 5-year development plan. And I think India's own is for the past 50 years, they've maintained it.
What about drilling down to the family level as they've done in China? So almost every family...
That's the next point I'm saying. With three-point agenda, just very strong. Right. The second one is the budget.
Okay.
They must work on the budget to make sure that majority of the budget, the large chunk of the budget is devoted to capital expenditure.
Okay.
And it requires revolutionary actions because there are entrenched interests and entrenched systems and entrenched workers within the system. The final thing is social protection. In fact, make it universal.
Okay.
Universal social protection.
Can you afford it?
We can. There are studies,
where are you get the money
recently,
from? Sir. Where are you going to get the money from? Like in Brazil, like the one you're talking about in Brazil, and their Bolsa Familia, they cover all the poor people. Even in Mexico, they cover all the poor people. You can't cover all the poor people in Nigeria, can you?
Yes, we can.
Okay.
If we change the budget. You know, sir, I advise Nigerians, the budget is not a public document. Go and look at the budget. When you see the content, you know that it can be changed.
Yeah.
You get the point. And bring out the money to affect the life of people. That is what we need to do. You see, the money, it may not be enough to cover everybody at the beginning, but we need to cover more. And people need to understand that this is the way to go. Once we do that, we do these three things. You know, we have a national development plan. We focus on the key sectors. We have a changed budget. Okay. and then we focus on social protection in a way that is focused on lifting poor people, then in the next 10 years, we have the potential of lifting 100 million people out of poverty.
Dr. Buja, thank you so very much.
It's
You're
my
always
pleasure.
wonderful.
Thank you, sir. Thank
Wonderful.
You, sir. Thank
Great
you, sir.
job.
Thank you.
As we said last time, even the World Bank has now found out that perhaps the most important tool for fighting poverty is human capital. As without education, health, wellness, and literacy at the most basic level, the chances of getting well-paying jobs are almost non-existent. Today, extreme poverty is mostly in Africa. Sadly, 23 of the 28 poorest countries in the world are in Africa. And Nigeria now leads the world with the notoriety of being the country that has the largest number of poor people, after China and India moved away from that category by evacuating hundreds of millions of their poor from poverty. As I said last time, that Nigeria is the country with the largest population of the poor does not make it the poverty capital of the world. It is not the poverty capital of the world. Indeed, there is no such concept as the poverty capital of the world. Let us not create it for Nigeria. It serves no useful purpose. Instead, it sends a message to the world that industrialists with their capital and technology should go elsewhere. Folks, any retailer or even business person knows how difficult it is to win lost customers back. Already, neighboring countries are eating our cheese. It is good to point truthfully to the facts for correction, even if painful. But it is painful and debilitating to be hit below the belt. What is needed is a program of industrialization and technology acquisition to become globally competitive in the production of goods and services. It is also very useful to design functional and affordable income security and social safety net programs. There are now innovations for achieving successful results. But finally, it will be impossible to win the fight against poverty without rapid improvements in human capital. We must bring our communities to stand up using partnerships that bring together academic researchers, business professionals, and policy leaders. This is what is at the heart of our innovative EBS Red in Africa program. To lift 100 million people out of poverty in 10 years in Nigeria, as things are now, is no small task. But it can be done. So let's go get them. I'm Magnus Kpakol, and that's my view.
Magnus.